It is now a great pleasure to be able to introduce Paul Quigley, who's the CEO of Newswhip, and his session is going to be how real-time data enhances decision-making. And I know in this 24/7 news cycle that we're dealing with, whether you're a communicator or a partner, it is increasingly difficult, increasingly challenging, and I think we're going to hear some great success stories of how Newswhip is navigating that process. Paul, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonna. Hey, guys. This is my first AMEC conference. I'm looking around the room at some new friends and faces. It's really been a really open and generous community. I'm kind of very excited to be a part of it. So, and to share some stories about people who are doing measurement and evaluation in a very real-time context. So, I'm the CEO and co-founder at Newswhip, and what we're going to be looking at is 3 different situations where comms and analytics professionals responded to acute moments, really critical moments, and used data to drive really outsized outcomes. We're going to be looking at Ford during the Texas blizzard, the World Health Organization, COVID misinformation, and in a very I guarantee a case study you won't see anywhere else, the interim government of Sudan fighting an attempt to foment a civil war, which was averted using media monitoring. Now, I've definitely heard from some people that real-time data can just add to the noise, and I completely agree with that. It's all about the process of which you can bring real-time data to the table. So I want to talk about, at these critical moments, what are the ingredients for bringing real-time data in a constructive way and having a real outsized impact. So we'll try and apply that lens to these stories as we go. And before I launch into them, I'll introduce what we do at Newswhip. We're a predictive media and social monitoring technology. We're focused on getting in content as soon as it's published in a very real-time way, and tracking engagement and the sharing and spreading and liking and tweeting and discussion of all that content as it spreads through social media. You remember the speaker yesterday from Coca-Cola mentioned that media drives social media, and that's very much the case. There's native things to social, but a lot of what happens on social media is the discussion and engagement with media. So we try and bring all of that together into one place and look at both media publishing, the content being published by media, and engagement with that content and how it spreads. We're very good at prediction. We get content in a low latency way, meaning as soon as it's published, and we gather a lot of data about every story or native social post. And then we're able to alert people when a post is going to become big before it becomes big. If there's a pattern of engagement in any post or story, we can tell you ahead of time how big it's going to become. And we're used by many of the insights and corporate comms teams at big brands. We work with a lot of very smart agencies who are advising clients on both opportunity and reputation issues. And we focus, say, a comprehensive view. We're trying to focus on this is the way people are consuming media today, is through the phones. So we want to capture how is that happening. The story gets posted, it gets tweeted, it gets shared. Let's try and get that full story that goes with each piece of content as it journeys through the human ecosystem. So let's zoom in on Texas. I was going to ask if there's anyone from Texas here. I don't know, but maybe people will at least be familiar with the Texas ice storm that happened last February. Has anyone heard of that? It was a bit of a big news event. About 70% of the power grid in Texas went down last February when there was a completely unseasonal snowstorm and blizzard that just froze the whole state for about a week and took down power lines. This caused lines at groceries. It caused people losing power at home, not being able to cook food, not being able to heat their homes. But Ford saw something very interesting that started happening. Michael Young, who's the head of global insights at Ford, saw an interesting phenomenon in some online forums, in particular on Reddit, where people were talking about how one Ford truck owner was using a feature of his truck, which is called the power boost. Basically, it lets you turn the truck into a generator. So you can plug in and boil some water to make a cup of coffee, heat up some hot plates, or even plug in an electric radiator. So this Ford owner was using his truck as a generator, and in a true kind of pioneer way was stepping in when the electricity grid failed. So what Michael Young saw was this was getting a lot of engagement as a native post, and he saw potentially a viral story. So what they did is they brought that to the Detroit Free Press, who picked up the story and very quickly went super viral. The story ended up getting over 1 million shares and comments on Facebook, and became a kind of a national news event. When all the other news organizations saw how viral this was becoming, they picked it up too. And not even satisfied with this earned media win, management at Ford looked at how much engagement this story was getting, and they went to the dealers, the Ford dealers in Texas, and suggested that they release Ford F-150 trucks off the lots to be used as generators in the community in Texas, which is what they did. So 500 trucks rolled off the lots in Texas and were used as generators. And this, of course, turned into a follow-on news story about how Ford were stepping in to help in this critical moment. And the outcome was essentially a global news story, and a huge earned media and reputation win for Ford. From their internal metrics, this drove direct traffic to the Ford F-150 website. This drove increased reputation benefits for Ford, seen as one of the top 5 brands who stepped up to help, and increased demand for the F-150 truck. And internally, I know as well from speaking to Michael, the engineers who built the Power Boost feature were completely stoked to see it being used in this way. And the confidence with which Ford was able to step in and take all of these actions, drive this earned media story, release trucks off the lot, was all because they could see in real time how big a news event this was becoming. And they're ready to step in. So that's a very inspiring story, but how do we get there? What are the ingredients for being able to apply real-time data in that way? And I think what Ford had there, and what we'll see in the other 2 stories I'm going to tell, are 3 core ingredients. A good baseline map of what to pay attention to, rich real-time data, and a culture that's data-informed. So what's a good baseline map mean? This is the world that Michael is monitoring. He picked this up because he was paying attention to forums and subreddits where people who love Ford trucks hang out, and they talk about what they're doing, what they're using their trucks for, and they find a story like this very inspiring. And when you move out wider into the world of reputation, there's going to be places where your fans are hanging out and places where your enemies are hanging out too, or people who might not like your industry or might disagree with what you're doing in the world as well. So having a very broad monitoring landscape set up to begin with is the first ingredient for being able to capitalize on a moment when it does happen. The next is rich real-time data. And this can give you automated triggers when something changes. I said that when something starts going viral, if a post starts going viral that links your brand with ocean plastics or your brand with some other issue, you want to be notified about that very quickly. So rich real-time data is the essential next ingredient, so you know when something changes in the map. And I want to zoom in a little bit on rich real-time data here and talk a little bit more about what an example of that. We track over time both media and public interest in any keyword. So you can see on the graph, hour by hour, how many news stories are being published, and on the top line, how much engagement are those news stories getting. So we can see on one hand, the media is interested in something, and then the public is also interested, and we can see exactly how much. And Christopher Rivera, who runs Reputation Insights at Samsung in the US, used this data to create this really neat little matrix that I want to introduce. With any news story, media interest can go from low to high. That's our x-axis. And then public interest can go from low to high. That's our y-axis. So when you look at any news story, you've got something that's low media interest, low public interest. And I'm sorry, but that's probably the earnings report or something that the CEO says we've got to put that out there, but ultimately no one cares all that much. Then you've got issues